I've always been a question person all my life. But lately, I've been thinking more about the questions we ask as we navigate the post pandemic work environment. Most clients are sharing how they are worried about whether they are asking the right questions or if they are asking enough. Should we scale now? Should we stay remote? Should we ask everyone to take the vaccine? What are office policies for teams in different countries with different lockdowns? There is no end to what questions we could ask and what the right answers are. So what can we do? Hi, I'm Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox and the host of this podcast, Dear Workplace. And today, we'll learn all about the power of questioning, including if there is anything such as a stupid question. What do you think?
So the kinds of questions that Ant experts are interested in are often really similar questions that everyone is interested in. Like, how do they share information? How do they make decisions? How do they build those nests?
Great question. I was curious, but I wasn't, like I said, I was super timid. So I wasn't asking questions, but I was listening.
If you would ask me what's a skill, I'm not even sure whether it's a skill, but it's a behavior that I show all the time. And that is, I ask a lot of questions.
Bruce Lee once said, "A wise man can learn more from a foolish question than a fool can learn from a wise answer." But are there truly no bad or stupid questions? While we joke that there is no such thing as a stupid question, I wonder if there are indeed questions that can be more meaningful. And if so, how can we ask more of those questions? Growing up, I've always been curious. My parents would tell me stories of how I'd ask questions all the time. Why is the sky blue? What is the difference between an animal and a plant? What happens to the food we eat? Why are there more mountains in Korea compared to Washington, D.C.? Why do I have to wear this outfit I don't want to wear? Yes, apparently I used to hate dresses. I have photos of me crying in a dress my mother made because I was so unhappy to be in that. She still laughs about it to this day. Anyway, my question journey continued throughout my life and has been my source of who I am today. Curious. What does being a diplomat mean? How can I work and live abroad? What if I change my career? It led me to explore new career paths, new chapters, and new experiences, and helped me become who I am today. But that doesn't mean it never crossed my mind if I was at times asking the right questions, or if at times I was asking too much. Good questions are powerful door openers. The more we ask, the more we get to learn, be aware of, and wonder. Still, not all questions are equal. This is why today I want to share 3 stories that inspired me to deepen my understanding of the power of questions, especially as we navigate this changing environment with the post-pandemic, where more uncertainties continue to lie ahead. First, good questions can help you re-examine your assumptions.
So my name is Joo-Seuk Maing. I'm a Korean German. I was born in 1978 in a small city south of Stuttgart. And currently I'm based in Tokyo, Japan. I've been out here in Japan for now about 4.5 years. And I work for a German engineering company, mostly in the automotive space.
Curiosity was a natural skill to hone for Joo-Seuk, who grew up in different cultures, countries, and industries all his life. Other than working in Tokyo, he has also worked and lived in Singapore, South Korea, and India for the past 13 years, where each time he would unlearn and relearn his perception of work, culture, and language. His diverse time in these cultures reminded him to never assume anything as is. Looking back, he still sees how asking questions, being humble, and being open-minded was truly the key to his success working across different cultures and industries.
No, I didn't know this at the beginning of my career. And if you would ask me what's a skill, I'm not even sure whether it's a skill, but it's a behavior that I show all the time. And that is, I ask a lot of questions. So I'm trying to, remain very curious all the time. And I'm not afraid and, to show maybe vulnerability to say, well, actually, I don't know this. Why is that? And then I think this ability of staying kind of calm and again, humble in saying and accepting, I don't know this, but can you please explain this to me? I think has been a skill why I've been also always kind of received with open arms, and it made it easy for me to, integrate and assimilate with local people, I think.
But it wasn't easy nor overnight. When I asked him if there was a moment that really got him to appreciate staying curious and asking more questions instead of assuming, he shared an example in language. The same expression can mean many different things, depending on where you are. And unless you take the time to learn the nuances, you may walk away from a meeting misunderstanding what the other party said.
Today, in our virtual life and world that we live in, due to COVID, much, much more, I think, than before. I think it's this ability to understand the nuances in communication and interaction with people. And especially in this worldwide setup that we have, where English is not always the first or even the second language, it's very easy to miss certain small little understanding of things. So I give you examples. Coming back to my days in India, there's this thing that people understand and know when Indians have this body movement, right?
What you don't see in the video is Joo-Seuk kindly demonstrating the Indian head bobble, where one would shake their head side to express something. It could mean agreement or kindly declining something without saying it. The key was that this was hard for him to learn as someone who grew up in German culture, where everything was black and white. He wasn't used to communication styles that left ambiguity, so he had to stay curious to understand what the communicators really wanted to say to understand them.
And people misunderstand, and Germans understand, who I think are a little bit more straightforward, and they need a black or white or a binary 0-1 kind of an answer, that this means yes. And an Indian friend told me, actually, this movement purely means information has arrived. So it's neither a yes or a no, but it's rather a information has arrived, let me process this and I'll come back to you. And so, that's one element. In Japan, for example, very much hi in Japanese is yes. So Germans, for example, misunderstand the hi, and it's a tone that you use as a filling word, almost like to say hi, hi, hi. And it doesn't mean, yes, I have understood. It only means, yes, I've heard what you have said. So these are the elements, I think, in communication I've started to realize there are these small little nuances, and especially in different cultures, where, different cultures gel easier with each other. So for example, I know from my Chinese friends, Chinese and Germans, they can communicate with each other because they have a very similar communication style. They are completely okay if I ask you, can I get a promotion? I need a salary increase, stuff like that. And Germans live and work like that as well. And I can tell you in Japan, that's a very, far away kind of a thing. And so I got interested because if I wanted to be successful in my job, I needed to understand that. And often I just feel kind of like a translator and a communicator of different cultures, of different people in a meeting setup.
How often do we take the time to wonder what expressions and body language really means? How can I ask to understand? Joo-Seuk's story reminded me how important it is that we always stay curious and not assume what we know and think is the norm. How we do things or expect things may be a certain way in one culture or one context. That does not mean that that's how things are always done elsewhere. If we assume, we're not only missing out on opportunities to understand others, but also missing out on understanding and appreciating the diverse ways of living and being for all. Second, staying curious can help you find invaluable stories.
Hi, I'm Cassandra. I'm excited to be here. I am a writer. I'm a dreamer. I'm a mom. I'm a magazine editor. I'm from Louisiana and I live in Los Angeles.
Meet Cassandra Lane, the editor-in-chief of the LA Parent magazine and the author of We Are Bridges, a creative nonfiction. Her book, which was published in April 2021 by Feminist Press, has won the Louise Meriwether First Book Prize Award and has received numerous recognitions and press, like from NPR. Cassandra had many lives. Before being the editor-in-chief of a magazine today, she worked as a newspaper staff reporter while getting her MFA in creative writing, has been a high school teacher, a college admission advisor, and even been the community relation manager for the Los Angeles Dodgers.
I was telling my husband, I've always picked jobs where I'm on deadline. I went into journalism. And so as a newspaper reporter covering everything from crime to house fires to education. So even before I became a mom, I've just been used to being on deadline. And growing up, I was the oldest of 5. So helping my single mom after her divorce, taking care of the kids and then juggling that with schoolwork and friends. So I guess that juggling has always been a part of my mindset and upbringing. And, you go through life, through the decades, and you add on.
Being great at deadlines. Now that's a skill that we'd all appreciate, as there always seemed to be something else going on. But there was another skill that she got to appreciate over the years that stemmed from her personality. She loved learning, but she was shy. She wanted to find a way to share her insights and learn by being off stage and off camera. How can you do that?
Yeah, so I think I was 10 or 11. I don't know if I remember this or if I've just heard it so much from my mom. But she said I was 10 or 11 when I said, Mom, I want to write books. I want to be a writer. But I was super shy, super timid. So I said, I want to be behind the scenes and just let my work be out there. And I really admired this one television news anchor. And, I just loved the way she presented. There seemed to be this authenticity to her. That's not the word I used back then, but there was just something that was very real about her. And I knew I didn't want to be in front of the camera, and I loved reading. So I just said, I want to write, I want to talk to people, but I want to do it through books, behind the scenes. I didn't know any writers. We didn't even have a bookstore in the little town that I grew up in Louisiana. But my mother used to read. That was her escape after working, and just the way she absorbed herself in the books. It's something that I wanted to give people, that pleasure of escaping into other worlds and other characters. So at around 10 or 11, I said that. And then as I got older, teen, I said, I still want to write, but I know that you can't just be this, famous or wealthy author. I had that practicality to me, like, that doesn't necessarily happen for most people. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into journalism. I'm going to be a newspaper reporter. I think I said 5 years. Then I'm going to work at magazines, and then I'm going to write a book. I said that as a kid, and that's what I did.
And that's what she did indeed. Understanding her drive and determination is key to how she continues to use questioning in her work and life. When I asked her why curiosity is key, she shared with me an example of how she finds stories from even trips to the grocery store. Tip: always carry your notebook to capture ideas.
Your city, wherever you are, a town, city, island, you are an investigator. You need to be observant. So those, carrying a notebook around wherever you go is super important. A trip to the grocery store might, lend itself to, I get story ideas all the time by being out and about and just asking people, wow, how did you get into this? There's a tiny little supermarket called Hank's Mini Market here in South Central LA, and the daughter inherited it from her father. It was just a tiny little corner store, and she's turned it into this beautiful, even though it's still small, this place that offers organic food and an otherwise food desert. She has food and health education, workshops on Instagram Live. And so I'm going to do a story on her. And I just happened to stop by one day after my workout, and that turned into a conversation, turned into a story. that'll be in the magazine. We'll have photographs. So everything, just be open to the stories that are all around you.
How can we get better at being curious to find these opportunities and stories? What if you are shy and don't want to strike up a conversation with strangers? Cassandra says the truth is, you don't have to always talk. You can find new stories and ideas by being a better listener.
Great question. I was curious, but I wasn't, like I said, I was super timid. So I wasn't asking questions, but I was listening. In fact, I remember, and this is in my book, where my mom, when I first said that I was changing my major to journalism, she was so worried. She was like, how are you going to be a journalist? You don't talk. You're scared of people. But I think what she didn't realize, I'm the oldest of 5, but I was just very like an old soul by myself all the time. And then I loved to hang around my grandparents. We lived with my grandparents after the divorce, and my mom was away working. And so I would just eavesdrop on my grandparents' conversations, their conversations with the neighbors stopping by, my uncles, like 7 uncles, always in and out of the house. So I might pretend to be playing with a doll or reading, but I was always listening. So in that way, I guess I was curious about the interplay between people and their words and the rhythm of their voices. And that served me well when I was a young journalist.
To ask more meaningful questions, you have to listen more. Instead of worrying about whether I am asking the right questions about the workplace, let's listen more. Listen to what you are feeling curious about and why. Listen to how people are responding. Listen to understand others. You never know what you may find at the end of the rainbow. Third, ask questions to connect the dots in unexpected places.
Hello, everyone. Monica, thanks for inviting me. I'm Daniel Friedman. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in entomology, insect science at the University of California, Davis, and I also am involved in a few other projects.
Daniel Friedman is a friend full of curiosity. We met last year through Complexity Weekend, where I started helping out as a facilitator. Complexity Weekend is one of his many projects where he loves to create spaces for others to rethink how they face complexity in everyday life. Complexity is not what should surprise us. It's how we process complexity. We see it as overwhelming and unsolvable. Daniel suggests that we see it instead as an opportunity to connect the dots in unexpected places. An example, how he fell in love with ants and became an ant expert.
I was not a bug child. In fact, I was not even studying science or too interested in it when I was younger. And in high school, I started getting more interested in biology. And when I went to college at Davis, I was curious about genetics. So I started studying that. And remember, I only found my way into a fruit fly genetics lab because I saw a piece of paper posted in the guidance counselor's room and emailed that person while the counselor was out of the room. So that started me into the intersection of insects and genetics, and came to know and love both of those areas. And then when I was looking for graduate school opportunities, I was given the very good advice that it's really like a total stack fit with the person and the question and the advisor and the school. And so asked around and found people to potentially query about studying with in grad school, found an excellent advisor, Professor Deborah Gordon at Stanford, and then ended up studying ants. So again, I didn't study insects before college and wasn't studying ants until I did. And since then, I've just continued to follow the ant and the distributed thread, which has taken me just all over the place.
So the next time you have to wait for your TA, check out what's on their wall and be curious. You never know where life can take you from staying curious. But of course, Daniel's curiosity did not end there. It had only begun. I loved what he shared about why studying ants had made him become even more curious about life in his surroundings.
So ant research, or myrmecology, the technical name, it is kind of a fringe area, yet ants are also very cool. They're very accessible. They're on the ground and everywhere. So the kinds of questions that ant experts are interested in are often really similar questions that everyone is interested in. Like, how do they share information? How do they make decisions? How do they build those nests? So all these kinds of questions, ant experts approach using scientific and philosophical, actually, techniques. So we use different techniques ranging from cameras tracking ants to genomic technologies like DNA sequencing. So we're using all kinds of scientific techniques to address narrow or broad questions about ant function and evolution. So that's the kind of what ant expertise is, the kinds of things that people are approaching it with. And then the ways in which the findings of ant research gets translated to application, there's a couple domains. And so I'm not trying to, lead with one that's more important or forget anything. But first off, just studying the beauty of nature and ecology and understanding how the tens of thousands of insect species, all the kinds of lifestyles they live, it's its own reward. But if we actually want applications, I think ants have special applications and insights for the areas of logistics and transportation, just in how they physically move things, as well as at the level of information propagation and governance algorithms. Not that we're exactly going to copy their approach to traffic jams or of governance or anything like that. And it's not just a canvas for us to project onto. It's more like a sandbox that we can use to hone our approaches to studying these complex systems, and then think about the distributed systems that we're in as people, as our own kind of worker, and then think about how we want to design that nest so that it works for all the nestmates.
Wow. So studying ants can help you learn about how information flows and how you can rethink your operation flow. I mean, how can you not be curious? Because ants are everywhere, Daniel is constantly reminded to ask questions across industries. It has helped him be a creative problem solver, even in face of complex problems in systems like, how can we make this workplace more effective, inclusive, and friendly for all?
Very nice. And again, this is why it's so fun to talk about ants. Maybe there's a conversation to be had about the dragonflies and being better humans. I'm sure there is, but the ants are a convenient starting place, are they not? So a few of these implicit baggage with ants and also how it reveals light on how we think about the world. So ever since really the developments in the second half of the 1900s, it's been common to talk about the ant colony as a superorganism that has a division of labor. Now, division of labor is a term of art from Adam Smith's 1776 book on the Wealth of Nations. So it's an explicitly capitalist framing, and we're not going into human issues today, thankfully, but it's a framing that discusses the utility for the colony like a society in terms of pure economic viability and the sustainability as an almost colony as an economic entity rather than as something that has to be resilient, ecologically embedded, and all these other attributes that don't often lend themselves to being reduced into financial metaphor. And so to kind of push back against that, it was so interesting to see the career of my advisor, Professor Gordon, and the way that in addition to this division of labor capitalist idea, she also talked about task allocation and about the value of interactions. And so in the metaphor of human leadership that you discussed, division of labor and the most just sort of coarse physical assumptions would be kind of the way that you described. How somebody looks is how they act. It's like an essentialist or a reductionist perspective, whereas the interaction and the ecology perspective would remind us that, as you often bring up, that we are like emergent with respect to the people we talk to, which is why it's so important to take a fresh approach to every conversation, include people who are similar and dissimilar to yourself along different axes. So it's like we see it in nature and we can see how we would make a scientifically bad decision if we project it onto nature. And then it's like, oh, wait, I would be making that kind of a bad decision if I scaled it up to humans times 100, because it's like a person's feelings in life, not just an ant's.
In other words, even ants teach us that we can work better together by strategically devising our workflows to account for how people are feeling. Daniel's excitement in how he sees new ways to solve complex businesses and life problems reminded me how important it is that we need to find fresh perspectives all the time. Feeling stuck with some of your workplace questions? Watch a movie to get new inspiration. Feeling unsure how to lead your new remote team? Take a walk and study the clouds to see what new ideas come to mind. Every experience we have is an opportunity to shape it into something possible. We just have to seek it out and ask questions to open more doors. What comes up for you as you look back at these thoughts from my three friends? Good questions are powerful indeed, but the key is also for us to recognize it and cherish it. Ask questions to re-examine your daily assumptions. Ask questions to find stories in unexpected places. Ask questions to connect dots in unexpected ways. Listen and notice. There is so much that life is offering us in every single moment if we choose to see it. Even now as you're hanging out with us at this podcast. Thanks for joining us today. This is Monica Kang, your host at Dear Workplace. I hope you enjoyed today's show. Stop by her show notes to find out more about our guest. Thank you, Joo-Seuk, Cassandra, and Daniel for sharing your stories and insights. Next, we'll be visiting another popular question that I get asked all the time. How can I do more with less? I'll be sharing some tips and strategies, but also inviting some guests to share their special tips with you as well. So bring your questions and thoughts, and I'll see you next time. Have a great day.
Oh, hi. I'm Creep Handy, a web designer and developer at InnovatorsBox, and I hope that you're enjoying Dear Workplace. A little fun fact about me. I have a doppelganger. Yep, the first time I met her, though, it was at an event where we both attended, and my colleagues went up to her and asked her when did I, well, or she, had time to change into a new dress. Who would have thought? This show is brought together by our awesome team. Producer Serene O, audio engineers Sam Lamart and Ravi Ladd, Kelly Gravo on marketing, myself as a website designer, graphics designer Monica Escobar, and Luke Helder on music. And of course, Dear Workplace is hosted and directed by Monica Kang, founder and CEO of InnovatorsBox. To continue the conversation of reimagining the workplace, visit us at innovatorsbox.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share. We would love to hear what you enjoy, and also drop us a note if you have any specific topic that you'd like us to cover. And I'll do all that I can to convince Monica to talk about it in our next episodes. See you next week.